Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. This is David Parra. We have a special topic today. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. If you do Facebook, you can find us under that name, AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. And find us, follow us, and recommend us with friends and family. We are addressing many important topics. And today will not be the exception. The subject today is democracy, balance of power. Democracy, balance of power. And today will be the first show in a series of monthly shows that we will be having basically on civic engagement. You know, we are beginning to see in the near future something called presidential elections. And everybody's going to be talking about this topic. I think it's one of those topics that the whole country pretty much starts to engage in the conversation. So we want to open up a little segment, a space within our platform to address this matter of civic engagements, our duty, right? They also call it our civic duty. There are some things that we are supposed to do as citizens of this country and of any country. There's something called a civic duty. So we are going to open up this space on a monthly basis. If you follow us on these radio shows, the Thursday show will be the first Thursday in every month. We'll address these matters, and then the following Tuesday in Spanish. So vamos a hablarles el tema que abordemos el jueves sobre este tema de la democracia. Se los vamos a traer en español el siguiente martes. So make sure that you follow us on these radio programs. And I would like to introduce now my guest. A lot of times people don't realize what it takes to put together a program. So it takes a lot of effort. And I am very happy that the two ladies, my two guests that are with us today, were very helpful in putting together this show. So let me... Yes, I think everything's moving well with the sound and the video. Let me introduce our guests to my left. I will start with, to my left, Guadalupe Sosa. Guadalupe Sosa. And you know what, Guadalupe, since I already spoke 3 minutes, I'm going to ask you to tell us your name again. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go on with our guest, Jerry Pastor. So why don't we start with you, and then with you, with kind of like the same. Tell us who you are and a little bit of what you've been up to in life, in your career, etc.
All right. Thank you, David. Yes, as David said, my name's Guadalupe Sosa, and I am a native Arizonan. On my mother's side of the family, there are 7 generations born and raised in Arizona, dating back to 1845 or 47, where my great-grandmother was born in Tucson, and so on down the line. On my dad's side of the family, I would be considered first generation because he came with the Bracero program under the, maybe 47 or so, and he ended up in the fields in Queen Creek, Arizona, just southeast of here.
Amazing.
That's where I grew up, went on to Chandler High School, Arizona State University, University of California, Hastings Law School in San Francisco. I worked for 19 years at the Arizona State Senate with the Democratic Caucus, and have been involved pretty much since a teenager in different activities, whether they're in the community, with my church, with campaigns and different things around here, and a little bit when I was in California. I lived there for about 7 years.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you mentioned your degrees. Can you mention again your degrees one more time? Because that you're a very successful woman.
I don't know about that, dude, but yes. Let me start with Queen Creek at the time, 300 students from kindergarten through 8th grade. That's where I got my 8th grade diploma. Everybody knew everybody else. Anyone knows anything about Queen Creek, it is now almost a metropolis. Then, like I said, Chandler High School and then Arizona State University. I had a wonderful teacher, and I wanted to be just like her. So I got my degree in secondary education, a bachelor's degree, and I never taught. I never ended up teaching because I went to work. I couldn't afford to go to school before going to ASU, and so I started working with Legal Aid Society. And then this thing about the law really interested me, and I thought, well, I'm still going to get my teaching degree, which I did. But then I went to California with the idea that I would go to law school. And that was where I went at UC Hastings Law School in San Francisco. And then I figured out that I really didn't like the practice of law every day. And luck would have it, I made a phone call. I was looking for a job, and I made a phone call to somebody, and they said, well, we have a position at the Arizona State Senate.
Wow.
Okay, and that was 19 years of my life, not practicing law, but making the laws, the Arizona Revised Statutes, helping senators write bills, write amendments, write their speeches, and so on. Very interesting.
Jerry, we really got the right person, right?
Oh.
Yes,
For
we
this
do.
show.
We are very fortunate.
Jerry, tell us a little bit about yourself. If you can speak closer to the mic, if you don't mind.
Okay, thank you. I was born in Phoenix, Arizona, and my family comes from St. John's, Arizona, where I'm actually fifth generation because my great-grandparents are from Nuevo Mexico. And
Both of them?
both of them. And as the New Mexico part of my life, I didn't understand until I was in college and after that, because they don't teach us history of our own history. And my parents would say, I would say, where am I in Mexico? Where am I from Mexico? Because I want to be, because everybody else has a estado de Kentucky, the Chihuahua. And I was like, where am I from? And my parents would tell me Nuevo Mexico. And I was like, I know, but that's New Mexico. It can't be just from that state.
Right.
Well, I didn't see a map until I was an adult that told me that Nuevo Mexico era un estado de Mexico, and that we were lost in the 1848 wars. So I was very content. I really think that energy came to me, that I went from St. Mary's High School to ASU to get my first degree. And they wanted me to be a social worker. Well, it's difficult to be a social worker when you don't want to hand out help to one-on-one. I wanted to change policies that would make a difference for you to receive more support from the institution I knew could give us.
Right.
And I ended up working at one of the settlement houses, Friendly House, as an internship. And more that I was there, I knew I didn't belong in social work. So I helped run campaigns. It was always a part of my life.
Wow.
Since I was 10 years old, I went with my...
Amazing. 10 years old?
Because I went with my mother, who supported one of the women to run for House of Representatives. I went because they gave out peanuts and candy and we used to stuff envelopes.
Right.
So, and I went with my mom everywhere. So I've known politics, and then of course I married into the Bastode family, and we continued. My husband, the late Robert Henry Bastode, was the first Hispanic justice of the peace. And I have been doing community and grassroots my entire life here because I love it. I believe in it. I think it's the only power you can have in your community and as a person. And we have a responsibility.
We have to. I'm so glad I have both of you here, because we're talking about democracy. I mean, you've lived it from forever, pretty much all your life. We have to go on our first break, about 45 seconds. I also got to meet with you, and I learned that you belong to the Arizona Adelitas. And this concept of Adelitas has to do with the revolution, Revolución Mexicana. In 30
Yes.
seconds, what is the Arizona Adelitas, Guadalupe?
Quickly, what I would say, it needs more explanation, but I would say the power of one. If you think about, we need one more person, we need one more volunteer, we need one person to help us. After the 2016 election, there were all these emails. People were in disbelief, they were angry, they were heartbroken that the results. And so then I sent out an email, and it was just me, and I said, come on, 16, 18 women. And I said, come to my house. Let me know if you're coming. I'll have some food and let's talk. We're going to have to be vigilant about what happens with this administration. So I say the power of one brought together many women and many people who support us.
Wow. Stay with us. We are going to come back and talk a little bit more about democracy, what it looks like, especially in the lives of these two women. They've been very involved. And then in the wake, if you will, of the 2020 elections. I mean, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to know? How does democracy look? What is a civic engagement, etc.? Stay with us. We'll be right back. This is AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. The topic today, democracy, balance of power. We'll be right back. Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. We have a good topic. I love it. I love this topic is democracy, balance of power. We're going to get to it because in democracy, there's a lot of power going on, right? But the whole, I guess, effort of democracy is how do you balance the power? How do you use the power for the people, right? For the people. To serve the people, to serve the common good. And we're going to kind of address some of those issues. But before we do, Jerry, I'm sorry, but I know your last name was Pastor, but I never dared to ask you where you got that last name. And I just, off the air, you told me that your husband is brother to late Ed Pastor.
Yes, yes, yes.
Can you just relate a little bit about, so would you say that kind of got you into the arena of democracy, politics, if you will, or more than that?
Well, actually, it was a bit more than that. I think Bob and I met on the ASU campus, and someone introduced us, and I was the executive director of MECHA, and we actually had money from Johnson's administration, and I was in charge. And actually, I got another colleague who was a student but a very good writer, and we wrote the proposal, and we started the Chicano Mobile Institute. And somebody brought him to me, and he was this tall, dark, handsome man. And I was pretty studious because my father had passed away, and I really worked and studied. And but he did catch my eye, and I was like, okay, all right. We'll hire him. So we worked alongside each other, and it was wonderful, and we were just a natural mix.
Amazing.
It was, and it was young love, and it was fantastic. And so I met the Pastor family from Miami, Arizona,
Yeah.
and I remember I was introduced by going up to cut a tree. Bob and I never cut a tree, but we had a great time, and I got to meet Nana and Tata Pastor, and
Amazing.
that's how the story goes.
Wow.
And when Ed passed away in November, there was a great deal of comfort that came to all of us and those who knew Bob, because Bob and Ed Pastor were best friends, best friends,
Amazing.
best friends. There wasn't anything better than those two,
Right.
and we knew they were together again, and that was very comforting.
Just from your sharing, I can tell that you have been breathing civic engagement, if you will,
Yes.
quote unquote, politics all your life. That is amazing. So you must understand how important it is, right? Democracy,
Yes.
how important it must be that everyone gets involved. So what has been your impression in terms of the involvement? I mean, we were talking off the air that the propositions that recently were voted on, you said, Guadalupe, that only 13+% of the whole population of Phoenix voted?
Correct.
Only
that was
13.
something that Jerry had seen. I don't know if it was online or in the newspaper, but 13%. And you're talking not quite a million, but about 970,000 people are over the age of 18. Now, how many of those are eligible to vote for different reasons? Even if half, that would have meant 400,000 people would have come out. Instead, it was only close to, I believe, close to 200,000 ended up coming out, 13%. And that's really, we are the 5th largest city in the country. We go back and forth. The Philadelphia mayor will argue with the Phoenix mayor, I
Right.
think. That's the other city that competes with us. But to have 13% come out of for this type of an election, very, very important, proposition, vote on a proposition.
Right. Ulises, I believe my, can you lower just a little bit? My voice, my mic is a little bit too high. I can tell in my. So let's talk a little bit more about democracy. But well, let me say something just about AARP, because I think it's important. AARP is a nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse candidates. We do not give money to PACs. But we are a 501c4. So we since our founding, Ethel Percy Andrews was our founder, and she's always been engaged. She always believed that the voter needs to be engaged, needs to be educated. So almost every year, I think that I recall, we've done voter guides. So we basically have our issues, the issues that AARP and advocates for, and then we do voter guides, and we send them to the candidates, whoever's running, and what is your position on this, that, and the other. So AARP, even though we are a nonpartisan, we are heavily involved in the process of democracy,
That's
in
right.
the process of legislation. That doesn't mean that we endorse candidates. That doesn't mean that we go for one party or the other. It simply means that we care about the issues. And I really wanted the audience to understand that we are a nonpartisan. We do not endorse candidates, and we do not make contributions to PACs. I just wanted to get that out there. I think it's important. So let's talk a little bit about this matter of advocacy, and I should say democracy. And probably at this point, it would be good to read these paragraphs about it that are in the Declaration of Independence. I can read them, or you can read them if you want. I think if you have them handy,
I have the,
Guadalupe, why don't you read them too? Okay, so if you have the Constitution, let me read then the one for the Declaration of Independence. Let's keep in mind that the democracy that we enjoy here in this country, in America, well, it's gone through a lot. It's gone through a lot, and I'm sure that you've studied it, and there was first the Declaration of Independence, and then there was the Constitution, correct? And obviously the independence was from Great Britain, and they made a statement. They made a statement before they actually went to literally fight for their independence, right? And part of this declaration says, we hold. You wanted to read it, or you want me to read it? I can read it.
I don't have
We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. So that's an amazing concept of equality, right? That they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. So there we go. Equality, rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So this is basically the Declaration, well, not the whole Declaration of Independence, but part of the Declaration, which seems to me very amazing that in the midst of this declaration to the Great Britain government, it's almost like, here we go, we want to make clear to everybody that we are going to fight for our independence. Here we come. So this is why we're doing it. Basically, that's what I take that the Declaration of Independence is, right? Any thoughts? Any thoughts on these words that you have when you hear them, especially in the midst of this action that these folks, these people, the fathers of this nation, were going to take to become independent? Any thoughts?
I find it interesting because we learn, at least by high school, about the Constitution and about our independence. But we also learn by high school, after we've been pledging allegiance since we were in grade school, that some of that is not as equal as we were meant to be. And that
Especially being Latino, you would just say?
being a Latino,
Being a minority?
being a minority, we no longer need to talk about minorities because we're moving faster and faster. Before I die, we will see states, and look at California already, that is the majority of Latinos. And that's why we come on air. That's why we do civic engagement, because that's what it's about. We have a responsibility to the people who cannot vote, but also to our children and our grandchildren. We are responsible, even when we have come against people who are against us because we look different. We are not white. And Latinas and Latinos have learned to be the best. We are usually taught by our parents to be the best because these were the best equal rights we had ever heard. We were governed by Spain and Mexico and all kinds of different people
in
here.
different ways.
In different
forms
ways.
of government
That's
that were
right.
not necessarily good.
And we weren't included.
Right.
So when we talk about our tradition and being here for the fifth generation, we talk about it to say, this is our land.
This is the only constitution you know, Jerry?
This is it. This is it.
Right.
If somebody told me to go back to wherever, a Latin American country, to Mexico, that's usually what they say, where would I go?
Right.
I just drive to New Mexico because
Right.
that's where I came from.
And you know, I'm a naturalized American. I came to the United States when I was 12 years old. And I have to believe that being, would you 5 generations? And you said 5 or 7? 7 generations. It must feel a little different. Maybe my children, they might feel the same as you, but how do you feel when the Constitution, when you hear about that, Guadalupe, I mean, 5th generation, that's the only thing you've heard of your life. So what feeling does that generate in you?
Having, of course, studied the law and did some work at the state senate, I put it all in perspective because it is what it is. There were 13 states. They were all men and they were all white back in 1776 when we did have our independence. And so you have to think about that. What were they thinking? Well, we kind of know what they were thinking. No rights for women, no rights for the Native Americans. There was still slavery and so on. But that was almost 250 years ago. So here it is now. We do have some liberties and we do have these equalities, but it's written. How it's enacted, how it's handled, there's no liberty or equality. And so what the forefathers wanted, ideally, I think, I'd give them the benefit of the doubt, this is what they wanted, but even they themselves were slave owners. And so things to me have not changed a whole lot regardless of what is on paper. But I hope, and I always pray that things will change. But then you see things that happen in the news, you read the newspaper, and it's like, oh my gosh, when you have a brother that was almost deported by by INS, and he's like, well, you should have let them deport you because then we could have filed a lawsuit. Those kind of things. There is no equality.
So, would you say that the that the democracy and the Constitution is the foundation, and now it's each one of us have to be engaged in the process because we're going to read another paragraph about the Constitution in order to make to form a more perfect union. I mean, those words are in the Constitution. So are you telling me that the foundation is there, but that we all need to continue to make that perfect union? Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. Because if we don't bring up the words of the preamble or the words of the Declaration of Independence and the preamble, then yes, we are not going to be receiving this equality and fair treatment and all. And we have to keep reminding people there are certain sections of the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, that clearly say 1, 2, 3, and 4, but they're not being implemented that way.
There's lots of work to be done. Yeah.
Lots.
We have to go on our second break. Stay with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. The subject today is democracy, balance of power. We will be right back. Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Topic today, democracy, balance of power. So we are reading pieces of the Declaration of Independence. It always amazes me, the words there, because, again, basically, if one reads the whole Declaration of Independence, they're basically writing what they're about to do and why. And I love the concept. Look, we're going to become independent from you, Great Britain, and these are the things and these are the reasons why we're doing it. And we feel it's our obligation to make it public and to make it known and to kind of write about them. So that's basically the Declaration of Independence. Then after the Declaration of Independence comes the Constitution, and then there's the so-called preamble, right, Guadalupe? Would you mind reading the preamble of the Constitution for us?
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States of America.
Amazing, amazing. So then the Constitution goes on to establish the three branches of government, correct?
Right.
And then the amendments comes afterwards.
Right.
So after the preamble, you will have the executive branch, and then you will have the legislative branch, and then the judicial branch, right?
Right.
So these powers, why separation of powers? People ask. Why three branches? Well, the short answer is to balance, right? To balance
absolutely.
the power so that not one will do whatever they want. So then and I was looking at a chart online. I think I sent it to you. And this chart shows arrows. In other words, how this one, how this one kind of balance out this one, and how this one affects the other one. And like for instance, a president, the budget, who approves the budget, for example, right? And then the veto powers, and then even though the president can veto something, there's a weight. I think that 2/3 the majority, they can override a veto by the president. And then the president will, how do you call it? Assign the judges. The judges. Is it called assign or
Court.
Appoint.
appoint? That's the word. And then the Senate has to say yes or no. And I mean, you see this balance of powers, but that's kind of like up here, up high.
Well, lately it's been very, very close, because any news channel is really discussing the person who is in the presidency, and the checks and balances are working because we have the House, but the Senate is not letting anything pass.
And let's talk about that, because in at one point, for instance, with President Obama, you had in the beginning of his terms, I think the Obama had both, or the Democrats had both houses, then 1 and 1, and then with President Trump, he had both, and now he has 1 and 1.
Yes.
So that in essence is good, because then the powers, I mean, it's a struggle. It's sometimes not a lot of things get done.
It's a
but
struggle.
In the end, isn't that what we want?
It is a struggle.
That the powers be balanced?
And it's frustrating. And that's where
Many
some
times,
of us
definitely.
in our community say, well, nothing's going to change. It won't make a difference. Why should I do that?
Right. And then it becomes discouraging.
Very discouraging.
Which we do not want to happen,
because
right?
it's so above us. And it's, we're not walking around Washington, D.C. We are living the impact of policy changes right now. And that hurts. But I want to talk a little bit
Bring it down,
about
Jerry. Bring it down.
what happened under Johnson's administration when I was a very young girl. I just want to make sure we got that part. And that we can say I joined the group who said we were not going to support the war in Vietnam anymore. Now, mind you, many of my colleagues have been left college and went to Vietnam. My first boyfriend, who was actually my neighbor, came home in a casket. And my reaction was, what are we doing there? And it was against what everyone was saying nationally. And pretty soon on college campuses, we saw all of us protesting. And when you say we cannot change anything, if you get depressed, if you think your neighbor's vote and your vote don't count, try to remember that history does give us strength.
Amazing.
Because we stopped the war, and Johnson was frightened. He was. And it was, people give Kennedy because he had the idea to do it, but he didn't have enough time because they killed him. But it was Johnson who had the guts to do it.
Amazing.
It was amazing.
So this
and
is the power
I know that
struggle?
power.
This is the power struggle. How does it, democracy, I mean, that was an amazing example, I think, of the democracy and the balance of powers. Guadalupe, can you bring it down to everyday folks, because democracy is broad, right? It's not just up here. It's not just presidential elections. It's just not wars, treaties, but it's also in the everyday life.
A real close example to a lot of us are the school board. They are elected by the people that reside in that school district. Then what do? They establish the budget for that school district. They decide what books your children are going to be using. They decide, through the help of the superintendent, the teachers, who hires, who fires, also who's going to be the principals at your different schools. So if you want a very close, it hits home, it's the school board. From there, you can go on to the city council, the same thing with the board of supervisors, and then the legislature, your state legislature, and then your executive branch. And as you were talking, the legislature enacts the laws. And then if somebody doesn't like them, they sue. So they go to the court. Or the governor signs them. Somebody doesn't like it, they sue, and they just go back and forth. And this triangle or balance of powers is really amazing to see. And sometimes, just like you're waiting for a campaign or an election, you're waiting for the results. When a case is before the city court, the state court, or the federal court, you're sitting there waiting for the result, just like you are waiting for the result of an election, and you're holding your breath. And we've had so many of them, of our cases or cases taken all the way to the district court and to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we're just waiting. How are they going to decide? How are they going to decide? And so, but the real beginning would be a school board. And do you care what your children have to eat? The menu? Do you care what books your children are reading? Absolutely. And that's why the involvement at the school board, one, to run for the board, but the other one is ask the superintendents, ask the principal, what are you doing for sports? What are you doing for health? What are you doing for all these different things? Do we have a nurse on board? Or who's going to give my child their medication? That's all decided at the school board level.
Do you think the bulk of the population, let's just focus on the Latino population, do we have those concepts of democracy that is very practical? And on the one hand, that would be a question, you know. What do we do to convey that broad sense of democracy? And second, it takes work. I mean,
takes
you
work.
know it takes work.
It takes work.
I mean, I know you
But
do. So how are we going to encourage people to participate in our democracy?
Well, because we know that the rewards are plenty, really. And you will see the reward and you've seen some of it already. We have accomplished a number of new Latinas in every school board. We have chairmen of school boards that are
I'm
Latinas.
amazed at the number of Latinos who are in elected
They are.
elected
And they're
office.
learning
Yeah.
the budget.
Right.
They're saying my child needs to have air conditioning. My child is going to be in sports. We need to have indoor basketball.
Right.
And those are things that allows that child to have aspirations of college. When we go to the law, as Guadalupe said, guess what? They are Latino attorneys who take these cases.
Right.
ACLU has Latinos,
Right,
Latinas.
right.
We also have lawyers. Many of us choose to go and have our work with another Latino in our community.
Right.
And education has been the change for us.
Right.
And we are everywhere. What we need to do is continue what we've been doing. I mean, celebrate what we have done here in the Valley and understand that our work is not done because democracy is our responsibility. And it's no different than the responsibility of taking care of our homes and making sure we have the right dinner for people, that we have the right family events so that we are taking care of our community. And our community can be divided in many different ways. But we have a responsibility, and we need to find the excitement about it. There's nothing better than celebrating when many of our candidates, and I have to say,
you're talking about excitement when in
Yes,
politics
yes.
and in democracy. Do you share that concept? I mean, I'm sure that you've experienced defeats, but also victories in fighting for something. I mean, is that how that how you feel?
Absolutely. When, for example, in school boards, when you see all these, Mexican Americans who have gone, and sometimes they didn't win the first time, but they continued and they continued. And some of them, like Jerry said, are at the state legislature. And then when you see all the different ways, the city council, all of a sudden they're putting up roadblocks or they're putting up something or they're not taking care of the streets. It's so nice to be able to say, I'm your constituent, I voted for you, and I want to keep you in office. But guess what? We have A, B, and C going on in our neighborhood.
Right.
Then you go to the legislature or the governor and so on. And it's very exciting to see all your efforts that you've done walking the streets in August and July and see the fruits of that labor.
Maybe on future shows, we would like to have you back and ask you to explain to us more on the practicality of how to run, right, for the different
yes, absolutely.
offices, if you will, the school boards, and maybe as a legislator, what is the process? Because I have to say that I am very encouraged. Even the number of legislators here at the
Yes.
state legislature, it's amazing.
Right.
We have many of them. I don't.
The House minority leader is the first Latina, and Charlene Fernandez is from Yuma.
From Yuma,
And,
I remember that.
and part of her district comes into Maricopa County, but she's fantastic, and she's there, and she's everywhere. You
Right.
should get to meet her. If you have an organization, call her. She'll be there with you.
Maybe on another show we can make a list of Latinos who are in
Absolutely.
office. I think that
Great
would be
idea.
great because it's impressive. And
Yes.
and to me, that perfect union, we're using the foundation of the Constitution to play the game, if you will, to play by the rules and to like as I usually say, don't stay in the bleachers. Go in and play the game, kind of thing.
I want to remind us about our history.
Yeah.
When we talk about Mexico and where women have been, we took the name Adelitas because they fought the wars beside our men, and I'm asking us to do the same.
And you know what? I told my wife this, not told, but shared with my wife this morning when we went out to walk, that the more people that I know that are engaged, you almost can trace them to somehow having relatives that participated in the Mexican Revolution. I have kind of seen that connection. So basically, they already knew about the democracy that you're supposed to engage in and make perfect or perfected, if you will.
Our culture is so proud of ourselves, and we are so strong.
Definitely. Thanks. Let's take another break, and actually it'll be our last break. Stay with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. The subject today is democracy, balance of power. We'll be right back. Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection, democracy, balance of power. Again, one of the things that I like about democracy and the Constitution is that there is a foundation to basically that becomes the contract, the rules by which we all have to play. And it's very interesting, as you were saying earlier, that the Latino community is no longer just waiting on the sidelines. Many of them are engaged. I mean, you're talking about that you're fifth generation, seventh generation American, you're fifth generation, and that all you have heard all your life was, about the Constitution and the pledge and allegiance to the flag. So that's all you live. But have you seen, the younger generations? I think I know the answer, but is that encouraging to you to see the younger generation understanding what the system is, what the Constitution is, the forms of governments that we have, and are they engaging, and are you satisfied with what you're seeing?
I'm beginning to see a great deal of Latino women, young women.
Okay.
If you look at any of the organizations that really help our community, they're headed by women. Mm-hmm. It's Valle de Sol has a director, a chief operating officer, and she's a Latina. And you see not only that, the head of Lucha, which is a young groups organization. They went and walked door to door
Right.
for 2 different candidates in Tucson and won. We now have a mayor of Tucson who is Latina, the
Right.
first Latina in the state of Arizona. So it is really exciting to see their energy and their belief, because they are listening. They were listening. And I think they caught some of that as they went through college and as they're continuing to be in college.
Right. Is college where a lot of younger, folks hear about politics and civic engagement more than maybe other settings? You think college? Because I remember when the Cesar Chavez story came along, many said that they were meeting at ASU, for example,
Absolutely.
and stuff. So,
Yes.
is colleges where things are happening when it comes to civic engagement, getting involved?
I think that it can be a start there, and for many individuals, now it's almost at the high schools where you see the issue, whatever issue is out there, you'll see some high school students who are involved because of what happened on their campus in their city. And so it's great to see the high schoolers, the 14 to 18-year-olds. But I think college is the one where you have more freedom. You're not going to be censored. Hopefully you won't be censored, but sometimes they do on college campuses. But you have more freedom to speak and protest and do all these things that we did when we were at Arizona State. But yeah, seeing it from the younger ones who can't go too far, all the way up to the college students who are able to really speak their minds and be involved. What I like to see and I like to stress is that people say, well, my parents are from Mexico. Yes, but you're born here. You are a U.S. citizen, or maybe your parents became naturalized. And so the parents can't make the connection that, yeah, my son and daughter, my children are eligible to vote, to be involved. They're a citizen. And, well, I would never say this, but I could beat up the president of the United States. They're not going to deport me because I'm a citizen. I could commit a felony. They'll put me in prison, but that's my birthright, is being a U.S. citizen. So I like to encourage parents who maybe haven't become naturalized, but your children are U.S. citizens. Encourage them to get involved, even in their student government. Sometimes, well, I don't know about this, I don't know about that. Do it. And if you don't win, you don't win, but you've learned something to take you on to the next step, to take you on to the rest of your elementary, your high school, and hopefully into college. Or even if you work and you participate in your work environment or where you're working at, and you see some wrongs or you see some goods, and you want to speak out about them.
Right.
And short of losing your job, but if you have protections, then you can speak your mind. So it's all the way through life. And the sooner they get started, the better.
Right. I have a quote here that, let me find it real quick. Abraham Lincoln in 1863 said, "Government of the people, by the people, and for the people." I mean, these are the democratic ideals, right?
Right.
And so I suppose that without people, without involvement, without civic engagements, there's no democracy. And I'm still remembering what you just said about earlier, the propositions that we just voted on, that only about 13% of all eligible voters voted. That's very little. So do we have still a long ways to go in getting more people engaged?
Yes, we do. I mean, it wasn't just the proposition. The election for the mayor of the city of Phoenix was also a very low turnout, which we expected. But we now have a woman who is mayor, and she's the only woman mayor for the largest 6 cities in the United States.
That is amazing.
But we should have been her. We should have had all our votes in. And you can vote for whoever you want. I don't necessarily tell you that one candidate is best than the other. When you're registered to vote, you get to choose that every day. Even when you register, you one party or the other, I can vote on the other side. It doesn't make any difference.
Right.
I have the right, and each of the people listening to us know someone who has that same right.
Right. Again, I have to come back of the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. I mean, this obviously has the background of being governed by, say, a dictator, by a king. Is very different. So now these new ideals that are offered as the new way to govern ourselves with the birth of this nation. And I've learned that even before the birth of these nations, there were already these concepts. I have learned a little bit about how the Greeks, the Romans, you know, those ideals, you could almost say were born in those times, and it became, I guess, perfected. And then when the U.S. Constitution was written, this concept of the people, by the people, and for the people, to me, it's amazing. It's a revolutionary concept that now, but you know, we don't have a lot of time left, but there's this concept, and why don't we touch it just briefly, please? Direct democracy versus representative democracy. Can you say just a little something about that? Because it's not like we all decide on all the issues as individuals, but we elect folks to represent us. And that's also kind of, I believe there's been the two aspects of democracy throughout or in history. But we currently have a representative democracy, right?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So what do? We elect legislators. We elect. No, we don't get to elect the judges, right? The judges, the Supreme.
No, but what happens is they're appointed by the governor or they're appointed by the president. So when you elect a governor, a president,
so indirectly,
okay. Yeah, they make the appointment.
But
they go through a process. But
right. So in the end, we still are involved.
Correct.
How about the legislators? Of course, right? The congressmen.
Absolutely.
Depending on your district, you get to basically say, well, I'm picking, selecting, electing this person to basically represent me. Correct. And then what happens when they're not doing what you think they should be doing? Then can you follow up?
Most of them have a district office, or you can visit them at home. They're really just your neighbor. All of them are.
Okay.
And what I always want to say to people is, when you elect somebody new and you've worked hard for them, don't leave them alone.
That's a
They're
good
just
point.
human beings. You need to get back to them. And you can say, you know, Charlene, representative, minority leader, I need to tell you and remind you that I worked for you for this and this, and I haven't heard anything about it. Can you give me a report? We have a responsibility to get to them, and we have every right to ask.
Right.
You can send them a text, you can send them an email. They respond.
So that's what, you know, it sounds very good. It sounds very pleasant, of the people, by the people, but for the people. But all three clauses have people, people, people. So it's us, it's me, right?
Me.
If I don't get involved, then nothing's gonna happen.
Correct. And when you have to think what was going on at the time, you know, President Lincoln was a very, I don't want to call him liberal because that was the beginning of the Republican Party, but he cared. He cared about what was going on with slavery. He cared about what was going on, the war, everything, and how the country was being divided. But when you say people, you have to remember that 18-year-olds were not allowed to vote. That it had to be 21.
Right.
Men or slaves were not allowed to vote. Women were not allowed to vote. When they said people, it was very specific at that time. Although in their mind, I think they wanted to expand it, and it's been very slowly expanded.
And we've made a lot of progress. Now women can vote. I mean, it's a lot. So we're coming to a close. I just want to give you maybe 30 seconds each to say just final words about this show or whatever's in your heart. Very brief. Maybe you want to talk to people listening to us.
Thank you.
Anything. Yeah.
I want to ask you to listen again and to come with us, be with us, because we plan on being here once a month, actually twice a month in Spanish as well, and continue until 2020. The important part of our civic engagement is here. And in 2020, there will be more Latinas running. There will be more Latinos running. There will be many, many more neighbors running that we know. And you have an opportunity to grow with them. And please, let's remember, we have an opportunity and to elect who is our president and who runs this country in the Senate and the House and Congress. And it's only by your vote that it will be.
Thank you. Guadalupe?
There will be many, many important issues that hopefully we will be able to discuss, as Jerry has said, every once a month in English and Spanish. You know, you've got the governor, you've got the state bringing it down, you've got the legislature, the Senate and House members, you've got some boards of supervisors, you've got some corporation commissions. I can't remember the governor. I don't believe that he is up for re-election, and actually he's going into his second term. But local school boards, there are going to be very, very many elections that hit. You may be distant. Again, we're not in D.C., but that impacts you as well as your local, the irrigation board that we have here in Arizona. I mean, so many local issues.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Guadalupe. We've come to the end of our show today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Stay with us and join us week after week. This was AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. See you next time.